You know what they say, Jake. New year, new me. It's a change for the training arc. We're going the complete opposite direction. We're calling people out this time around. We're going with the hottest of takes. We're going to make some insane, just clickbait titles, right? I don't know. First one that comes to mind is things like you thought you knew Dr. Zordos until you watched this video, right? Like stuff like that. So we're changing. It's a whole new thing. Um, I don't know. I even just say that I can't. It's like I'm sorry. I would apologize in advance and just say that we're not changing. But with the new year, it's so weird saying that. I thought we could do it, but nah, maybe not. We'll continue on this training arc that we got here. So
We're doing what we're doing. It's working.
yeah, I think so. We're having fun. But yeah, I think with it being the new year, right? And in the last episode, we talked about just goals in general, like how to achieve them, what some things that we plan on doing. I think something that came to mind was just talking a little bit more about coaching, right? And how that can be beneficial and conducive to the goals that you have for training and nutrition. And I think it's not going to be one of those things where we talk about, hey, this is why you should sign us up as coaches and hire us, right? I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit, but it's definitely not a big plug. And it's more so reframing maybe what coaching means and is and what it can be, maybe what it isn't. Because I think a lot of the times we get maybe some misguidedness in terms of what coaching is, right? We don't really know what it means, and maybe people think it's something else, but it's rather not. But yeah, I just figured it'd be a fun topic to kind of dive into. So without further ado, let me ask you a question. Why do you think coaching can be beneficial, Jake?
Wow. Well, I guess I should also say, you speak for yourself. All I care about is money, and people should hire us as coaches, and that's it. No, but so why is coaching beneficial? There's a lot of reasons, right? And I think it depends a lot on the person and their circumstance. Not all these will apply to everybody, but I think some people, it's like an informational, educational thing where maybe either you're brand new to this thing and you just don't know anything and you want somebody to help you get started off on the right foot. I think that's honestly admirable, to like put your money where your mouth is sort of, and pay for something right off the bat. And boy, can it fast track a lot of the learning. But then even further along the spectrum, maybe you're somebody who's been in this world for a little bit and you're absorbing, you're learning a ton, but then you reach that point where you're like, wait a minute, who do I actually believe? Because now I see conflicting stuff. And so now you want somebody to help kind of sort through and help guide you a little bit, like somebody that you trust that can help you kind of differentiate between different things. So I think some of it is that, and just like a knowledge thing. I think some of it is an accountability thing, which I feel like, I don't know about you, man, but I feel like sometimes that kind of gets like a negative connotation of like, you're just not disciplined enough to do it on your own. So you need to pay somebody to do it. Which is absolutely true. No, I'm just kidding, obviously. But it's not that at all, right? Like everybody benefits from like, whether or not you're paying somebody, whether or not there's strings attached in any way, like literally just talking to somebody about the thing, or even just being aware that somebody else knows that you're doing this thing. It just helps you get into that space more, right? It's more at the forefront of your mind. You don't just forget about it and fall off. And so it's super valuable. And I think the more busy that you are, the more helpful it can be, because your brain just gets so full of stuff and it's easy to overlook, So I think accountability is huge. I think that just the offloading decision making on somebody, even if you know what you're doing, like a lot of coaches have coaches, a lot of people, who are very advanced, who are very experienced, still have a coach because they just don't want to think about it. They want to use that time and that mental energy to coach their own clients, or to do their work, their business, or to focus on their family, or whatever the case may be. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's super valid, right? That's kind of me, I love having a coach because I don't have to think about it at all. It's great. And then, I say that, but then as we'll talk about later, like you can collaborate and do stuff together, which is super fun. And, that's really cool too. But anyway, I think those are like the top three things that come to mind. I'm sure there's, some other things too, and some different individuals might have like a small, maybe a less common thing that they really get out of it. Some people get like friendship and connection and that kind of stuff from it, or just the ability to talk to other, we've talked about this on our podcast before. Like I have this random YouTube channel where I can talk about fantasy books, because like I have some friends who are readers, but not a ton. and I just wanted to talk to more people about it. So if somebody's super into lifting, but none of their friends are into it, and they all think that they're weird for spending their life in the gym, it's nice to have somebody, on that same wavelength as you. So I get that too, the community feel, all of that. So,
Someone who's
but anyway,
probably even more weird because they're like, I'm doing this for a living.
yeah,
I went so deep into it, into the
yeah,
studying, and like, I love this stuff. It is my life in a way.
yeah,
So it's just like you get to find like, oh, okay, it can be this way. But yeah, I think you hit so many good points there, and I think the first one I want to touch upon a little bit is just that idea that there is no prerequisite to getting a coach, right? Like you said, sometimes
yeah.
people might think like they need to get to a certain level before they then get a coach, or they get to they deserve in quotations a coach. But that's not the
Mhm.
case at all, right? Like you said, if you get on it super early, that's again you could fast track things a lot. And I think I don't know about you, I would have loved to have a coach super early on,
Oh
right?
man,
Because it's like one of those things where you had to figure it out yourself, which it can be still beneficial in its way, right? Because you can maybe learn it a little bit more, go through trial and error, so you have a different arc in a way, and different outcomes and process, all those things. But I think it's yeah, if you're just trying to get on that straight track right away, it can be so beneficial to do so early on, right? Because you're just kind of dodging all that misinformation that's out there, and there's a lot of misinformation that's there, right? So kind of avoiding that idea of just overthinking things, of confusion, of making mistakes. You'll still make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but it'll have someone to talk to about it and how to navigate those mistakes and how to learn from it and grow from that in a little bit with just more general direction rather than just saying, well, something went wrong, let's figure it out, and expediting the process. So I think yeah, it's no prerequisite. Everyone can benefit, and like you said too, coaches can benefit. And I think a lot of times coaches maybe benefit the most because it could be so many different ways they can benefit. One, like you said, just avoiding the thinking process. Sometimes, and one of the sayings that always comes to mind is, a doctor is the worst patient. If as coaches, we'll probably be overthinking things way too much than what we need to, right? So it's like, get that out of my mind, get that out
yeah,
of my hands. Someone else has to worry about me because good luck to them, first off. But also, like, it's like I don't want to have to, deal with that because I know how, intense or how difficult navigating training and nutrition can be as on its own, let alone myself and everything else going on. So I think, yeah, coaches can benefit a lot from that too. Not only just through their own goals and training and nutrition, but also through learning new ways to coach or thinking about things, right? Maybe one coach puts you on a direction that you maybe didn't really think about or is a little bit behind in terms of your priority list, whatever it might be. But you come out with that saying, wow, I didn't think of it that way. Now I can approach that with my own clients, or I can, have this new mindset or this new approach that can be beneficial and keep in my toolbox. So down the line, if it ever comes up for myself or other clients, I kind of know how to navigate that. I think that is something that is undervalued, right? Just learning through other coaches. Because I think that's one of the most important things, and kind of jumping ahead slightly, but just what a good coach is just really being open to learning. And I
yeah,
think in that continuing education part of thing, right? Just coaches should always be, right? It's rather than saying like, this is how I do things because it worked for me and I'm going to just throw it the same thing at everyone else. We're here being open to, okay, people are different. People will respond differently to different things, different approaches. So let me just really equip myself with all these tools as best as I can so that whatever comes my way, I can do my best with handling. So yeah, I think it's coaches can benefit for sure. And I think there's just, and when we think about training and coaching itself, the main two things that come up is, in person versus online. And I think that's an interesting thing that we're even talking about that, right? Because like we talked about before, like it's such a weird thing that online coaching is a profession or a thing. It's just a thing in general, right?
yeah.
So I think what is one of the main differences that comes to your mind when you think about, it could be like pros, cons, or benefits, or just things in general, in person versus online coaching.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind, there are certain things that are just easier in person, right? Like, especially if you're brand new, for example, right? And you want to make sure that your technique is good. It's so much faster to dial that stuff in when somebody's in there with you, right? And they can like demonstrate right in front of you. They can give you feedback immediately, and it's so much easier. You can do it online, absolutely, right? I mean, there's physical therapists that work online. You can do all this kind of stuff, but it just is more efficient, to do those things, face to face. Some people also just don't like the online thing. They want to interact with another human more face to face like that. I totally get that. It just feels more personable and more I don't know, human in some ways. Whereas other people are the opposite. They're like, dude, like I want something, I don't want to take the time to go to the gym at this scheduled time and it's, more rigid. I want the easier, I'll go to the gym whenever I want and I'll send you a voice message on WhatsApp about how it went or whatever. So I think it's lovely that both exist, because there's just different people from the client side and the coach side, right? Like some coaches jive with one of those models more than the other. And some people would absolutely hate the idea of being an online coach, and they have to do it in person. Other people are the opposite, so, I don't know. I'm glad they both exist. I think they both have a lot of similarities, but especially the technique stuff. That's the thing that jumps out to me the most, and just the social interaction. I think those are the two main things. Do you have anything else to add
Yeah, I
there?
think that there's that part. I kind of the same thing, just the humanizing part of it, right? It's just so
Yeah.
nice to just have a conversation with someone like in real time rather than maybe going through just voice messages or emails. I think that
Mhm.
can add that personal side to the personal training or the coaching. And for some
Yeah.
people, like you said, that's going to stick more. That's going to be something that keeps them more consistent. And I think that's where the point I wanted to add is it may help with consistency because you physically have
True.
to show up, and you're taking someone else's time as well as yours, and you have to, it's just more
Yeah.
weight to it, right? So I think
Yeah.
if
Accountability.
yeah, exactly. So if someone's really struggling early on and they feel like they need that larger accountability side of things, the in-person could be great for that, because they're like, okay, well, if I don't show up, Colby's just going to be there looking at the stars outside or something. He's just going to be chilling. And like,
Crying, right?
yeah,
Is what I would be doing.
he's normally cries a lot anyway. So like, I think he can do with another bit of crying. That's okay. He'll probably just be sitting in the corner playing RuneScape on his phone. So it's
Yeah.
fine.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that can be very beneficial for the in-person, right? Is where you have that bigger accountability. I think
Yeah.
the the other thing that's online that I like is that it's like the opposite, where there's less accountability, but especially, and it's important that the coach frames it this way, it gives more autonomy to the
Yeah.
client in a way that is centered around learning, right? I think it's important that a coach doesn't then create a situation where their client relies on them so much. And they're like,
Yes.
okay, you make all the decisions for me. To some degree, yes, don't get me wrong. And I think we'll touch upon that a little bit more. But it shouldn't be actual dependence where they cannot critically think on their own or make decisions on their own, because that I think is a negative thing. And that's just a little
Yeah.
bit harmful to themselves, to their progress, to their journey. So I think the online allows for that, right? So you're at the gym and you're, okay, I don't know what to do for, should I increase load? Am I outside of my RPE range? Whatever it is. If in person, you'd be like, yeah, don't even worry about it. I'm putting up the load for you. Here we go. I'm
Right.
even loading it up for you. You don't even have to worry about that. Look at that. That's cool. But it's in person, or online. You're in there yourself. Here, okay, let me think about this, and then you have to kind of navigate that and build that skill set as well, which I think is important for people to get to a point where they can do that. So I think that's one of the big things there. Again, it can be, some people might hate that idea. Again, they don't want to think, so they can maybe benefit a bit more for the in-person stuff, but vice versa, depending on where they're at in their skill level, what they think, it's a great opportunity to build off that. So
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a really important point. And it's fun. I literally just had a conversation with a client, was it yesterday or the day before, maybe, about form videos, and about how, like, I'm not always going to say something, right? Even if I notice something's not quite perfect, I'm not always going to say something. And it's like, well, why? And it kind of goes along with what you're saying. Like, there's literally, some of the research in motor learning and, learning technique, that's what that is. There's research that's like, you don't want to just spam somebody with all the cues and correcting them constantly, because they're going to learn faster if they feel themselves make mistakes and they get that immediate, like, biofeedback, and then they can correct it that way, right? If you're just constantly giving them word directives, it doesn't work as well, and it's almost, in a way, there's also parallels to, like, I don't have a kid, but, like, as a parent, a lot of the advice I hear people with kids talk about is, you have to let them stumble sometimes, right? And be there to catch them and help them learn and that kind of stuff. But you have to kind of let them go out and make some mistakes here and there and learn how to think critically and learn how to use logic and stuff like that. And I think that applies to this sort of thing also. Maybe not somebody who's completely brand new, right? You got to be more hands-on there. But as they start to become a little bit more independent, you can start to kind of, you know, give them a little bit more space. And it seems, in my experience at least, and it seems to kind of align with some of the motor learning research and all that kind of stuff, that when you give them that little bit of space, it kind of takes off even more. And then from there, you can almost kind of come back and start to, like, collaboration stuff that we'll probably touch on later. But yeah, I think that can be huge.
That's one of, I think, the most important things that a coach can recognize, and that someone looking for a coach should kind of look for. It's hard to look for that, I guess, but it's that's where that trust comes in when you're coach, right? It's one of those things. Again, we're not just blindly throwing them, saying, hey, "Yeah, go make this mistake. You'll be fine. Load up, 400 kilos on the bar.
Yeah,
You got this." It's one of those things where you're just putting up guardrails, right? You're saying, "Hey, go
yeah,
in this general direction. I'm not going to let you get into the gutter and get injured or do something that's going to harm you, but I want you to wiggle in this little room." And within this room of
yeah,
wiggling is where you learn. You make a little bit of mistakes, but you come back, reassess, then go further a little bit more, but you're still going forward. You're still, and if
yeah,
anything, maybe a little bit less forward in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to make bigger leaps because of what happened here. And that, I think, is one of the hardest things to do as a coach, is to emphasize that, frame it in a way that is going to keep people engaged and comfort, have them be comfortable doing that. And then also, just, yeah, just that idea, right? Because when you talk about coaching in general, a lot of it can be seen like it's based off the results. And to some degree, it very much is, right? Like, I come to you because I want more weight on the bar, or I want to lose body fat. And a lot of people want that, and they want that quick. But as we know, it doesn't happen that quick, right? And especially if you're the newer you are, or the less experience you have, it's going to be maybe a little bit slower, even with the coach, right? Because a coach, I think this is also a misconception, is a coach doesn't do everything. A coach can also not do the actions for you, right? You can bring a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And I think that's very much a situation here too, right? You can hire the quote unquote best coach in the world who has all this knowledge, all these whatever it is, and then they can give you the handbook to success. But if you don't actually put in the work, if you don't communicate, if you don't show up, then it's not going to happen, right? So I think it's one of those things where, coming into the space of coaching, both as an athlete and a coach, it very much comes at a level of respect for that game, right? And I think that's just important to recognize, right? Because it's like you talked about, it is a collaborative process, right?
yeah,
I can give you, like I said, here's the handbook, but this handbook wasn't written for you. It was written for the general mass of people, right? And then from there, I need to know how you're responding to that. I need to know if this is working, if you like this, if you actually haven't been doing this but haven't been telling me. Like, I need to
right,
know that, right? That communication is so important, and that trust, right? And it really comes down to the trust, where you create a relationship where they feel like they can tell you, hey, I'm struggling. I just didn't do these calf raises at the end of my workout, because who the hell wants to do calf raises, right? Or like, I got too busy, and obviously I skipped them because it's calves. But, good. I'm glad you told me that, and it's important to. But let's dive a little bit further, right? Why you're skipping it? How can we make it more likely that you won't skip it? Is this important to you? Is it not? Questions that we need to assess, right? I don't have the answers right away, because I need some answers from you, but I can't go anywhere if you don't tell me that. So,
yeah,
yeah.
100%. Yeah, and I think that the how like sort of how precise some of those directions and stuff are that we're talking about in the general guidelines, and putting those bumper rails up, like those bumpers can be narrowed or widened depending on the circumstance, right? Like, for example, like a contest prep, I think, is the easiest example. Early on, they're pretty wide, kind of do this stuff, you're going to be fine. The closer you get to that point where it's like, bro, trust me, eat this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it kind of, you just have so much less wiggle room as you get closer and closer, that obviously giving strong recommendations, right? It's not a meal plan. We're not doing anything shady here. We're doing everything right. But you have to get more fine tuned. You have to get, at a certain point, I think it really sort of needs to be much more specific like that, with such an extreme goal. But nonetheless, yeah. But yeah, man, I agree with everything that you're saying, and I think that um, a lot of those are skill things that you have to learn, right? So some of it is knowledge, but some of it is just, it's a lot of relational skills that you have to learn as well. And I think that leads into this idea of, like, how do you pick a coach? Should it, are all coaches equally qualified? Is everyone able to do this? Does everyone have the right to do this? Like, I think it can be sort of a hot topic in some ways,
Just,
right?
hey, it's like I said, new year, new us. Let's go into the hot
Yeah,
topic.
we're gonna go.
Hot
So
take.
who's
Actually, not everybody should be coaching.
yeah? Well, that's my question. Who's catching strays?
Yeah.
What is your answer to that framework there?
It's okay. So for one, uh, we don't mean to throw strays, but if this
I want
somehow
names.
resonates
I
with
want
you,
specific names.
okay, okay,
No, I'm kidding.
handles on Instagram. No, I think it. Yeah, I think I will say it with some strength because I think it is very important that coaching is important to me, right? I do it. I love it. I love what it can provide for others and for myself. And I think with that, like I said, it comes with that respect where it's not just writing programs. It's not just guaranteeing everyone that they'll get results with you. It's not just, all these flashy things that we often see on Instagram, all these empty promises, because that's just not genuine. That is a
Yeah.
disservice to the people, to themselves, to this industry, right? Because at the end of the day, it's someone's health and someone's goals and like general life in your hands, and that's a lot, and you should really respect that. I think, right? So I think it's a lot of times people are like, you're an online coach, get a real job, or like, what is that? Everyone does that, right? And I think I understand again where that comes from, but I don't think that's true, and I don't think that's true for good coaches, right? And not saying like, look at us, we're just the greatest coaches. I think we're good. I'm not gonna lie, but I think we're good for specific reasons. Because one, first and foremost, we recognize this. We're talking about this right now, and it really is an important thing, and we care about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it really comes from that trust. It's important to recognize that it's when you're looking for a coach, you should ask a lot of questions and understand where they're coming from, what their general coaching philosophy is. If they don't have a coaching philosophy, I think that's kind of a red flag right there too, right? People should really have these values or whatever it might be that ingrains them into why they're doing their coaching, right? Is it continuous education? Is it just the idea of sharing their knowledge with others? Like they should have something to go off of, right? Not just I do this because it worked for me and I could just give it to the same exact program to someone else and make money off it. Woohoo!
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. So yeah, I think it's yeah, I get a little bit heated about it because it is, it's precious to me, the coaching, and it's important. And I think
Yeah.
when you are looking for that coach and what kind of stands out, like it's important to recognize too, like you're not gonna a coach isn't gonna fit everybody, and you're not gonna resonate with every coach, and that's okay too. And I think a lot of coaches can't recognize that, which is also maybe a red flag. Like at the end of the day, the goal is for the client to be successful with their goals. If you cannot provide that, then it is important that you say that, and then maybe even point them in a direction that you feel like might be, hey, listen, like I see where you're going. I don't think I'll be the best fit for you, but I know like this person here potentially, is in line with that. They have much more experience in a specific goal. I think it'll be great for you there, right? It's not one of those things where, oh no, I need money. I'm going to just say that I know what I'm doing and let you come in here and just roll in the cash. And if you get to your goals or not, there's not to me. You just didn't work hard enough, bro. Right?
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
just
Which is,
that bothers me.
and it's kind of easier said than done in some ways, right? Like
Yes.
when you're just starting out and like you're begging people just to give you a chance. It's really hard to not just take anybody who hits you up.
Yeah.
Um, and and like I get it, I do, right? I don't, because it's also like, how are you going to learn how to do it if you don't try? How are you
Mhm.
going to get the experience if you don't do the first one? I get it, but like if you know in your gut that you're just not going to do a good job, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you know it's going to be bad, you got to be honest, right?
And you don't have to know that early on too. You can, like I said, give it a go. But if as you're going through it, you're struggling to go like have conversations or to
Yeah,
get like feel like you're doing the right thing, say that, bring that up. Hey, like honestly, I don't think it's working out that much, but here's someone that might be a better fit for you, and this is why. And
yeah,
that's important to say. And that's again, that's hard. I've had to do that before. It's not
I
fun.
too.
It's
Yeah,
not fun. It makes me
yeah,
sad. It does. But again, if it's one of those things where you're like, I want you to be successful, and that's just not with me, then all the power to you. Let's get you to where you want to be with someone who can get you there. And that's
yeah,
not me. That's okay. Like you have to come to that realization as a coach and also as an athlete at some point too. It's
for sure.
important.
Yeah, and I hope that you know, I hope this doesn't sound gatekeepy. Like, oh, you shouldn't be an online. Like I think, yeah, dude, there's an endless number of people who can learn the skills to be an amazing coach, right? Like, it's not just this inherent thing you're either good at or not good at. I think some people, of course, are going to be naturally like anything. Some people are going to be naturally just really good at it. Some people aren't. They're going to have to learn the skills and stuff. But you can certainly learn it. It's just, do you have that sense of responsibility of like, this is, I mean, not to get too out there, but it's sort of a sacred thing, right? Like you said, you have somebody's health in your hands, not just it's not just about, are you going to tweak your back, right? Like the amount of mental health stuff that has just been torpedoed by especially bodybuilding coaching is crazy. Like you have such a profound impact on somebody because they're in such a vulnerable state, and like some people will trust you blindly no matter what, right? Which we can certainly argue there's some responsibility on the client as well, right, to have some sort of delineation there, but nonetheless, right? So I don't want this to be gatekeepy, but at the same time, anyone who's interested in getting into this, or if you're looking for a coach or whatever, you want to kind of just be on the lookout for those other like relational skills. That I say this all the time, like programming and coaching are two very different things. AI can write you a program now. I'm sure it can adjust it week to week if you give it the feedback or whatever, right? I'm sure it would do it, but it's all the other stuff that goes into really tailoring that program, really adapting on the fly, week to week, day to day, in the middle of a session sometimes, right? Like there's all kinds of stuff that's going on. And then also just all the emotional support and all the just, really feeding somebody's motivation and like figuring out how somebody ticks and like, how can I really motivate this person? What does this person need from me on that level? Not like AI is not, I mean, maybe someday it'll be able to do that, but like, I sure hope not, because I want to keep this job, you know? But that's one of it gives me peace of mind, right? That, because a lot of people, I remember when ChatGPT first became a thing and they're like, what's going to happen with coaching? What's going to happen with all this stuff and personal training? It's like, I really think it's always going to be there, man. Like that interpersonal connection is so important. It's such a vital part of the process that just can't be replaced yet by machines until they become sentient, which when they go back and listen to this, they will realize that we love them and we are fans of the smart machines.
I
And
love
please spare
AI.
us. My machine overlord, don't kill me, please.
Have you ever actually played around with GPT
A
and
little
making
bit.
programs? It's interesting because it gives you a decent direction.
It's
But
not bad.
like you said, there's and that's just. But the important thing is the prompt that you put into it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think coaching is so valuable that you can't miss, because a client might not know, or a person might not know how to write an accurate and an appropriate prompt that will then give them what they need. They can be
Yeah.
like, how to get jacked in a year, and you can get something, and it might work decently. But if you don't talk about how many times per week you can train, how much time in the gym per session can you train, and prior injuries, enjoyment, so many other things that a good coach should be able to assess, ask the right questions, and get to a spot where they have that information,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to either take longer to get there, which is still okay. You might get there. But it's just, how efficient is that? How conducive is that to the goal? Depending on where you're at mentally and physically, how likely are you to actually stick with it because of that, right? If things take too long or you're too frustrated because things just, too many questions arise and it's too confusing and you don't have someone to bounce off ideas of like a coach, maybe you just quit because, again, no accountability or no real or large attachment to that. It's just, I just wanted to do this. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's interesting. I played around with it too because it was curious. Because like, hey, do we have a job in a couple years? It's like, I think so. And the biggest thing, like you said, is, and so many people forget this, especially coaches, is that you're working with humans. And it was always talked about on this podcast too. It comes down to just being human and working with humans and understanding what that means, right? And realizing that, we're not lab rats. We're not like every participant in a science research study, or we're not going to be able to stick on something that's optimal in quotations because, we're human. Maybe work is a little bit longer, so I can't go to the gym today, or only have 30 minutes in the gym today because something happens, or right, all these things that can come up being human and how to navigate that. Chat GPT can only do so much, right?
For now.
For now. Don't say that. For now. 2 years, 3 years from now. Welcome
Yeah.
back to the Training Art Podcast, where we're just talking about anime because we no longer can do training stuff because Chat GPT does that for
Uh,
us.
so on, which also like that also means, right? If you're somebody you need or want a hand with your programming and stuff, right? And all that stuff, and you can't afford a good coach right now because coaching isn't cheap, right? Well, let's just be very honest, and it is a luxury thing, um, and you really want it, but you just can't swing it right now or whatever. Like these options are viable, right? You can use the AI stuff. You can just Google a program. Is it going to be the best thing ever? No. Is it going to be completely non-functional? No, right? Like it's better than nothing, especially as AI continues to get better. It'll just get better and better at all that stuff. And I don't think it'll ever be as good as a real coach can do, but maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, sort of on that note too, like let's say somebody is they're in the market for a coach, right? How do they sort through the endless options that are out? Because it feels like everybody coaches.
Mhm.
That's obviously not true, but like it really seems a lot of people have that perception, which is understandable. Based on your algorithm, you just get shown all that kind of stuff, right? So how does one sort through all the options? What are maybe some things to consider? Some different options that they might have. We talked about in person versus online stuff, but even within those, there's a whole lot of differences. So I guess how would you recommend somebody tries to start navigating that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people might think as well that coaching is just like a one track path where it's okay, I'm doing weekly check-ins every single time and I have to pay X amount, and that's a lot because it's weekly, so I'm getting a lot of time from them. That's only one of the options, right? It can be so flexible where maybe you're only doing bi-weekly check-ins, monthly check-ins, or
Yeah.
milestone check-ins, right? Okay, get to this body weight. Once you get to 80 kilos, come back to me and
Yeah.
then we'll reassess, see where you're at, do like a more in-depth check-in, and we'll go from there.
Mhm.
Or I think the most underrated thing is you could, a lot of the times there's an option to just do like a single call where
Yeah.
like it's just, hey, fill out this questionnaire so I have some information before going into the call. I understand where your goals at, what are the things you've done in the past. So then this hour that we have together, I'm just very direct and saying like, okay, this is what you've done. This is maybe what you can do in the future. Here's so much direction that's specifically tailored to you. And then there's a lot of back and forth within that hour or whatever it is that you end up doing. And that can be so beneficial, right? Because if you can't do the weekly, monthly coaching, whatever it is, that could be enough direction to last you 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, a year, even if you're like, hey, like, I just wanted to like write a really rough macro cycle. Like, what's this year look like? Boom. Here's how I'd approach progression from week to week. Here's when I would deload, why I deload, things to look for, nutrition wise. Boom, 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 and like that could be so valuable, right? So that sometimes people forget that that's also an option. And I think again, this is going to be based on your goals and needs. And if you need more direction, that's when you get a little bit more coaching, but that can be enough. And that can be more than chat GPT, or that can be more than just the information that's out there online now. Because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great free programs and great free information out there. So if you're someone who likes that, like likes navigating and learning new things, you can find it. But it takes time to find the right things and how to understand navigating those. So again, if you want to expedite that process, you can do something like that single time coaching, which is underrated for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's also kind of it can just give you peace of mind, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe you really feel like you know what you're doing, but you're in that paralysis by analysis thing. And I mean, I've a lot of coaches get that, right? Because we love thinking about this thing and we love the complexity. But then when it comes to our own training, now we, like you said earlier, we start bouncing around, we start second guessing, and it can be really nice just to sit down with somebody for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever, and just tell me I'm on the right path, right? Like
Yeah.
it can really be that simple. There's nothing wrong with that.
I've done that so many times. And there's so many times where if it's just like one of my friends or someone that even participants, sometimes like, hey, you did our study, like I got you for some coaching. Let's have a meeting and talk about what you're thinking.
Yeah,
It's like so many
yeah,
times I'm like, dude, you don't need me. Like
yeah.
like you maybe know more than me. Like this is great. You're doing a fantastic job.
Mhm.
Right. And that like pat on the back or that assurance, like you said, can be so much. And that's the other thing too, is depending on like what you actually sign up for. If you're doing like just monthly coaching, you could do just a month, because I've had that as well where people sign up and they're like, yo, honestly, it's been 4 weeks, but I've gotten so much and I've gotten enough to the point where I feel like I'm ready to just continue doing it on my own. And
Yeah,
I think that is the ultimate goal as well, right? Is get clients to a point where they feel comfortable enough doing it on their own. They don't have to, right? Some people really like that extra accountability or the idea of not thinking about it. But I think ultimately that's the goal, and that you don't hear a lot of people talking about that too. Because again, if they come from that point of I need to, give me all the money, I want you to be dependent on me. I'm not going to tell you the secrets because money,
Right.
and that's not it. Because maybe I run you through 8 weeks of coaching, you feel ready to go, boom. You're off in the wild. You can help other people. Someone else who needs the help and can get more from it comes to me, and it's like we're creating this cycle of helping as many people as we can, and that's ultimately the goal of this whole thing. And I think it's so easy to forget that because we're so focused on money, right, and just doing all this. It's so yeah, I think that's an option, right? I've had actual coaches as well who come to me like 8 weeks, and I'm like, yo, I don't know why you're here. I had to tell them like I think like you're ready to go, like you're ready to fly, little birdie, you're ready to fly, and they're like, okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true, man. And I like money as much as the next guy, right? Like just being transparent. We're trying to do this as a career,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
we have to pay our bills. So the it's not like we're trying to push people out the door, but I think the idea is that, and you said it very well, people should be able to do it on their own. They don't have to do it on their own. But like I think the education piece should certainly be there. Not that you need to, every check-in you need to be like, okay, well, and today we're going to talk about this study, and here's how you don't need to do that.
yeah.
But just when you make an adjustment to the program, explain why you're doing it.
Mm.
Or if somebody asks you a question, answer the question as well as you can, right? Things like that. And um, dude, I've there's a few people I work with right now that I've literally been coaching for like 3 or 4 years, which is amazing. And I think that part of why they are there is because it's this constant, like, they know, like a lot of times they know the adjustment I'm going to make before I do it. Right. Which is, it's so cool to me. And that's my relationship with my coach is very similar. And I think that you work with somebody for a while and you just relate to them so much as a person. You build a friendship, you build that relationship. You know that you can ask them a question anytime and they'll explain it. And if they don't know the answer, they'll go figure it out, or they'll point you in that direction, or at least, or whatever. And I don't know, people just, I guess the reason I say this is I don't want people trying to get into coaching, or current coaches to get scared about, like, a lack of client loyalty, or whatever word you want to use. Like, just because you're teaching somebody and giving them the tools to go on their own doesn't mean that they're going to go on their own. In my experience, a lot of times those are the people that stick with you the longest,
Yeah.
for whatever weird paradox reason. But it's great, and those long-term relationships are when the best things happen. Also, right? You learn each other so much better. You can collaborate so much more. The program gets more individualized. It's great.
I think one of the reasons why people stay that long though is because things switch up very fast in this in the
It's true.
research realm, right? Dude, it's in the past 5 years, how much have we actually learned? So much. Things that we thought didn't work kind of work now. We have more direction. And like in terms of science, things are going very fast in this area, right? And that's super cool. But
Yeah.
if someone who isn't, isn't a researcher or isn't up to date with the literature or keeps up to date, that can be scary. So knowing that, hey, I could just,
For sure.
reach out to my coach, like, hey, I
Yeah.
saw Jeff never posted this. What's your opinion? Like, how would you approach this? Or
Hmm.
cool, like you can explain that, and that's a lot of people really like that, having someone they can just go back and forth with to help keep out the noise and understand what to kind of
Yeah.
focus on, and that's extremely beneficial, right?
Huge.
And that only then helps your decisions as your training goes on more accurate, right? Because the other thing
Yeah.
too is people's lives also change because the world changes. Oh,
Yeah.
I get kids. No, I'm not training 5 times per week anymore. Looks like
Yeah.
it's 3 sessions in the garage with a bag of rice. What do I do? And you're like, let's do it. We can make some great sessions happen because we made it through COVID and we learned a lot through that too, of how to train in your garage with just rice. So, and and I think a good coach can be adaptable in that way, right? Where it's like, regardless of what you throw at me, we can make it happen. And that's one of my favorite things about being a coach. I think I talked about that before, where it's like they come to you with their resume. Here's what I can and can't do. Here's where I want to go. Here's what I got. What can we do? And you whip
Yeah.
something up, like you're chefing it up in the kitchen, and you're like, here's this meal. Let's make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, another indication of a good coach too, is that they're okay with making mistakes and acknowledging those mistakes, because that's the other thing is too. Like I say, I can whip up this meal and I can give you this great dinner, but maybe it doesn't taste good, or maybe it doesn't. Right? Maybe it's not exactly where we want it to be. We could switch up the ingredients a little bit or how we make it, because that's the other thing too is you're not always going to get it right on the first try. Right? You can't create a perfect program. There's no such thing. But I think one, like a coach should acknowledge that and also know how to navigate that, right? You can't just be like, I know it all. This is the perfect program because it worked for me. Here's Small Love Junior or whatever it was. Like something, you just throw a ton of volume on it and hope it works, or something like that. Instead, it's like, hey, this is what, based on the information you gave me and what we're looking at from science, or what we use some type of pillars from learning, education, whatever it is. Here's our best guesstimate of what I think will work. From here, we then will test it out, we'll analyze it, we'll collect some data, reassess, and create a new program that's only built off the next one. And that's a continual process that happens forever. That's basically science too. Like you're doing science in a way when you're coaching, which is also very cool. And I think why we really like it. But that's the thing is, I see a lot of coaches or people like promise quick results or say like, I guarantee you'll get to where you want to be in 12 weeks. That's a disservice. That's just untrue. That really is. Because like how you can only be so accurate with with how much you're given and how much time you have, and it's the more time you have, just the better you're going to be, right? So I think it's always a refinement process. I think when it comes to the coach, and that's why again some people like being in it longer, because they just become so accurate where they can navigate whatever life throws at them, and that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, like it's amazing. I'm sure you get this all the time. Also, people come in and they're like, "What do you think I'll be able to bench in a year?" Or like, "How much can we add to my squat in this next cycle?" Or things. And I'm just like, I don't know, dude. Like nobody knows the answer to that, right? Like it's you might be able to say like, well, I've worked with X number of people that are a similar weight class, and maybe they've been lifting the same number of years, so they added this. Like you can give them that answer, but maybe their sleep was different. Maybe they were gaining weight versus you're losing weight. Maybe there's so much stuff that's going on, and some of it is also just like random, right? Like if you haven't heard, one of the governing forces of the universe is chaos, right? That's how it works. So, it's those sort of promises are so hard, and those, I almost flinch when people are like this time of year, right? When sometimes people are like, these are my lifting goals for the year, and I want to hit these numbers. And I'm always, not that I want to dissuade people from doing that, but just like really double down on making sure that they feel reasonable, because it's such an easy way to set yourself up for disappointment. And I know saying that might sound like I don't have faith in myself to get them there with my programming or whatever, right? But like, it's not that. It's just the outcome is not promised, right? So like, we talk about this a ton. The process-oriented goals, rather than I want to bench 315, it's I want to show up for every bench session with the intent to make progress, and I want to be on top of all my variables, and you know what I mean, stuff like that. But those questions can be tricky, but I think about that, and I think about somebody coming, like I've literally had that from somebody who is applying for coaching, and it's almost like they're fielding different coaches' answers on like which coach can get me the furthest in the shortest amount of time, which is just not how it works, right? Because you're going to do, this is what I always come back to, is like whether you want to bench 225 or 275 or 400, I'm going to give you the same program either way, right? Because the program is what I believe based on what we know and the circumstances and blah, blah, blah. I believe that's the optimal program for right now, right? It's the best thing that I can do. I'm not, you know what I mean? So we're going to do the same process regardless, man. So the outcome doesn't matter. But anyway, ramble aside.
No, real quick before we stop that ramble, I think that's such an important one, because that's the other thing is a coach should be able to navigate that conversation with them and get them to a point where they can manage their expectations as well as their emotions, because that's one of the biggest things that comes with coaching is managing expectations and just emotions, because again, we're humans. So someone comes to you saying, I want to put 100 kilos on my total, and you're like, hey, we're going to give it our best shot. I can't promise that, but here's what I'm planning to do and what like might happen, and here's how much wiggle room we have, all this, but maybe let's focus a little bit on the smaller wins first. Let's navigate this a little bit more. Why do you want to get this goal, and kind of further explore that, and just have a little bit more tangible things to hold on to so that we can keep them in that process while still having this overarching goal, because I think that's still important, but these shorter goals might be helpful. Or if we, pivot our focus to the enjoyment side of things, like the process, or pivot on it's a really improved technique first before we worry about how much load we're putting on the bar, because then that's going to give us a greater net gain down the line, right? Thinking long term. So like, how do we navigate those conversations of shifting it to the more long term thing? Because it comes down to it really just takes time, but people don't want to hear that. And don't get me wrong, I understand it. We want things quickly, especially things like, body composition changes and strength, but that's just not how it works. So I think a good coach should be able to navigate that conversation in a way that's not demoralizing, that's helpful, that's reassuring that they're going to be on the best possible path, whatever that might be. And it still keeps them excited about lifting. And that's the ultimate goal. Because if you're excited about it, you're enjoying it, you're going to stick with it. And all of a sudden the goal comes up, you're like, oh, damn, I'm lifting, my total is 100 kilos now, but now I want more. Right? But you don't realize that because you just enjoyed yourself so much while you're getting there.
For sure. And that some of it's being adaptable to the person also. Like I have a client, shout out to my client CJ, who's like, he is so on his, like, this dude, he gets it done, right? Like he just executes the plan so well, and he's very number driven. And so like he had some like number specific goals for the year, and I see it, and like I'm just going to be like, yes, this is amazing, right? Because I know him. I know that helps motivate him. And when he talked through the goals, he explained why he picked that number, which is the key point, right? He was doing this on his own. So that's why I don't like correct it and, whatever. And they were reasonable, right? So just wanted to call back to what you were saying about being adaptable and how that, this might be an interesting way to kind of end the thing, because I think we've hit on a lot of great stuff. But as somebody who might be looking for a coach, like what sort of questions, what sort of things should they be looking for? Because we've talked about good coaches, like how do I find a good coach? And I know we've hit on some of these, like being adaptable, and emotional intelligence is a huge one. Knowledge matters, but I think at the end of the day, if you're a good person and you're emotionally intelligent, you're gonna, if you don't know the answers, you're gonna take the effort to find those answers because you care, right? But I guess I'm curious if you have some extra thoughts on that. I have some other stuff I could throw out, I'm sure, but
yeah, I think like I said, we've hit upon a couple of things, but maybe some of the stuff that is a little bit more specific. I think when you're trying to figure out if the coach is right for you, they should be asking a lot of questions too. You should be asking a lot of questions as an athlete, but I think like say you're emailing them back and forth, or you're looking at their page, trying to figure out what it is, like how they approach this process. What are things that they talk about that they value, right? Like if you look on my bio and Strong by Science, it's like, I love the process. I love learning, and this is why I did my PhD. For some reason, that's how I talk on the website. And right, so
there's Mickey Mouse, actually.
I mean, it is me from like undergrad, I'm pretty sure. So it's basically the same thing. It's like a big smile, and I'm wearing like a Pikachu shirt. So
we're both on the anime. I got Broly today.
I got the Hunter x Hunter, of course.
This is the real Broly, by the way. I don't care what anyone says. OG Broly is the best Broly. I don't care that Super Broly is a better character. He's not as cool, okay?
I mean, just more. We did promise hot takes, so there it is. There's nothing.
There's my Dragon Ball take.
There's hate comments coming in. I can see it. But yeah, I think just understanding, like if you're not able to talk to them beforehand, just trying to figure out how they navigate stuff, right? Maybe you do go on their social media and see what they're talking about, how they're talking about it. See if their general vibe connects with you, right? Because that's another thing. You could be, like I said, you could have all the knowledge in the world, but if it just doesn't click, that's important. And that's okay too, as a coach, to be like, it's just not working, right? And that's okay. But I think through that, again, a good coach be able to manage expectations. So how they talk about that and how they navigate that is important, right? If you do have the chance to talk one-on-one with them, right? Because usually, at least my process, it's someone applies, then fill out a form so I get a little bit more information, so that when I go into that first call, I have a baseline of good information, but then I ask a lot more questions to get more and to get deeper understanding into the whys of things, right? So I think right there is kind of good indicator. Again, not like tooting my own horn, but if I'm asking you like why it is you're doing things that you're doing, if a coach does that, they really want to know, because it's important to know that. It's not that, again, they can't just like, okay, you want to get this weight on the bar or this body composition goal, that's it, that's all I need to know. If someone figures out why, that's important, and I think it's a good indicator. So I think that kind of process is helpful. I think, yeah, I think it is important to have like rationale behind why you're doing things, right? So if you are prescribing something, you should explain why, right? I don't think you need to, but then if a client is able to ask the question as to, hey, why we're doing this, you should be able to provide good evidence. It doesn't have to be scientific. I think that might be a decent place to start, right? Because hey, based on the science, this is why we're doing it, and then we're gonna from here. This is step one. We're gonna try this out, and then step two is here. I think that's another good indicator, right? When they have, hey, here's our process of what we're going to do for the foreseeable future to figure out if what we're doing is beneficial or not, and then how we can also adapt through that, right? Because as a client, I want to be reassured that we're taking the right path. But as we talked about, that's very hard to do. But if you give some rough plan that has step 1, 2, 3, A, B, whatever it is, that's nice to know, right? So I think that's another pretty good indicator. But
Yeah, all that.
yeah, what else? What else are you thinking?
I think, and you kind of hit on this too, but I think a great place to start is if they put out some content on the internet, go see what they're doing, right? Because one, is it good information? Which is a difficult question to answer if you don't know all the stuff. How do you know who's right and who's wrong? But if you're seeing a lot of people say very similar things, maybe there's little differences here and there, right? But like if a lot of the people who are in the evidence-based world, they associate with each other, they collaborate on things, et cetera, et cetera. If they're saying some kind of similar stuff, if you know absolutely nothing, that's at least some sort of green flag, right? It doesn't mean that they might be completely making it up, they might be wrong, they might be whatever. But if you know absolutely nothing, it's not the worst starting place in the world. But seeing somebody who seems to be respected, usually a good sign, right? If people generally have good things to say about this person as a coach, usually a good sign. See what they're doing on with their content. Is it valuable in some way? Are they just telling you the black and white facts from a study, which is probably wrong if that's how they're stating it? But are they giving you context? Are they giving you maybe examples of how different people might apply it? Are they critically thinking in the sense of how they're communicating the information? And I think equally, if not more important, is in like the comment section. How do they interact with other people? How do they treat other people? Are they, generous with their time? They take the time to answer things, etc., or do they just ignore every comment? Or do they argue with people and they're super negative? And not that they're bad people or bad coaches, but it's just good information to have. Does that jive with your personality type? Is that what you're looking for? And I think that that's super super important. And then maybe you apply for coaching, you get on that call, whatever. See how that goes, right? Like maybe you have some questions. Maybe there's some things that think about what your values are. What do you really want to get out of the process? And maybe you ask about that, like, hey, like, is this something that I can get out of this? Is this realistic? I'm not saying to go into that with like a laundry list of interview questions that you're going to grill the coach with. But like, there's nothing wrong with asking. That's what that call is for, right? Is to make sure it's a good fit, and that goes both ways. So I think that's generally what I would do. Like make sure you're looking into different options, do some digging, right? Make sure that you're making a thought out choice. Because we talked about coaching as a responsibility and they need to take it seriously. You also need to take it seriously, right? Like you want to make sure you're entering into a relationship with somebody who you trust to actually do a good job and guide you well, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, because I think on that note too, a lot of the times, like we talked about before, we do want the client to have that autonomy. We do want them to make mistakes. We do want them to learn. But at the end of the day, you're the coach. It's your call, right? And it's important that they know that,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes it can be easy to fall in the trap as a coach. Like, yeah, dude, just do whatever you want. You got this. I believe in you. And sometimes that might work, but
There's a time and place for that
yeah,
sometimes, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. But sometimes you need to make hard decisions,
Yeah.
and they're not easy. But you have to be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't compete because we're not on the right spot too.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear that. Hey, that's my goal. What do you talk about? Trust me, I understand. But again, hard conversations. A coach needs to be able to have those, and how they approach that thing is important too, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where that comes, like the empty promises thing shouldn't be there. The ability to be open minded, right, and to be, if you're asking questions, for them to be, like, oh no, that's stupid. or not that's a stupid question, or like that approach is dumb. Like, why would you listen to this person? That's they don't know what they're doing. No, hey, that very well could be an option. It could work for them. This is why it might be, but this is why maybe we're going to take this option or this direction because this. And if that doesn't work, hey, maybe we can try that and see how it is. We'll run that for a blog, figure it out, collect some data, and regardless, we'll come out with some good information. Right? We're still learning. It's not a fail. It's not. We're not going behind. We're just taking a slower step forward or a side step, but it's still not backwards, right? We're always learning. And again, I think that's where that integrative, that learning process, coaches who really emphasize that, I think it's a good place to be, and an indicator of a good coach because of that, right? Because we're always learning, even coaches, right? We don't know it all. We don't.
Yeah,
So
that's maybe that's a good way to end it. Is like, there are some coaches out there that are like, they have hundreds of thousands of followers, and we put them on a pedestal, right? Always remember, they're just a person, right?
Yeah.
They're just a random person who happened to blow up on social media or whatever, right? They're not going to be perfect. I think that's important to keep in mind.
100%, it is, right? That's where it's much more than how they look or what they say. Right? It takes time to figure that out. So again, it all comes down to that respect for yourself, for personal training, for others, other people's goals, for the coaching process, all this. So I think just remember that. And I don't know, like where else could people find coaching, Jake?
I wish I knew.
Yeah,
somebody. Us, bro, us. That's it. Again, sales pitch. All I care about is money. Apply to coaching. Pay me all your money. I'll give you the same cookie cutter program as everyone else to save me time so I can have 500 clients.
And if maybe if that doesn't resonate with you, maybe if you just liked what we said on this podcast or what we talked about, maybe you want to learn more, and just reach out to us, right? Email, Instagram, whatever it is, saying, hey, let's talk a little bit about this coaching process, and we can take you through exactly what we talked about, right? Maybe we'll hop on a call, maybe we'll have you fill out a form, but I think we really do love doing this, right? And if you're following this, or if you know that, I think you can kind of see that already. We're always open to sharing more, to learning more, to having people reach their goals, to be excited about training, because again, we love it too. So if we can share that with more people, we'd love to. So hit us up.
All jokes aside, we do, as humbly as we can possibly say this, I think we both would say that we feel we are good at this.
Mm-hmm.
And because we take it seriously and all the stuff we talked about today, right? So, but at the same time, we might not be the best option for you, right? And that's totally cool. We fortunately have some connections with other people who maybe they're a better fit, and we can help point you in that direction as well, right?
And just know that if you choose between Jake or I, you will, hurt one of our feelings, and that's it.
That's true. As
always, thanks for listening to the Training Arc podcast. Make sure you think about that next time you talk to us. But as always, we appreciate you being here, and we'll catch you at the next one.
Thank you, everybody.